isn't like so. Oh, we're being recorded now. Thank you, Doug. It is not something that's taken lightly, and it's not set up in the bylaws to be taken lightly. It has to be severe, and it's not someone complains and then you're kicked out. It's not like that. It would go through a process, but we didn't have it at all in our current bylaws, and so we felt the need to be able to say that there is that option. In Article 5 for meetings, I mean, I don't know if you want me to go through these one by one, but we changed the notice requirement to 14 days, and that was because, believe it or not, when it comes down to getting the budget to everyone or whatever it is we need to get to people before the annual meeting, it creates a crunch on the back end that is very possibly not in the membership's best interest for us to be crunching that much and thinking more about the 30 days than actually making sure we have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. We ran into that last year. My understanding is they've run into it almost every year. So to alleviate that, we're saying notice is 14 days, but we already have the meeting date set. It's not like the first time anyone will hear from it about the annual meeting will be those 14 days, but that really just gives us time to get the budget done correctly before we send it out to the membership. What next? Oh yeah, so we also added an enumerated list of matters that require a vote of the membership. We did this for clarity, because I can't tell you how many times we come up against something on the board and we spend 20 minutes trying to figure out, is that something that goes before the membership? Is that not something that comes before the membership? So we kind of decided this is to just let it be known exactly. All we have to do is check the bylaws. That's more of a functional thing.
Mitzi, where is that stated in the bylaws? Which paragraph are you referring to?
Article 5.
Article 5, but where in Article 5? Is that the motions paragraph that you?
No, we're talking about notice. Oh,
notice.
In there somewhere.
Well, you're talking about.
I don't have them in front of me, so hold on a second. Let me pull them up. I'm just going through my chart.
It's the
give me a second.
List of things.
Sure.
Can somebody else answer that question while I'm pulling them up?
I mean, under motions, there's a enumerated list. Approve the annual budget, call or remove minister, or elections of directors.
Right.
Is that it?
But okay, so I didn't, because the way that reads is the language there says that these shall, well, it says motions at annual meetings shall be passed, but it doesn't, the language there to me doesn't say that these have to be considered at the annual meeting. It only says that if they're considered at the annual meeting, this is it's majority or not majority.
Yeah, these
so
don't have
so that's right. So that's our enumerated list. It may not be that they come up every year. So
I'm not going to call a minister every year.
No, I understand that, but the way you were characterizing this, you were characterizing that these are the decisions that need to be made at an annual meeting or a special meeting. But
yes, and I do believe that is how that's how it would be. It's not. That's how that paragraph would be interpreted.
Okay, and maybe I haven't seen this written before, but there's nothing in the language there that says these must be decided at an annual or special meeting. It just says motions at an annual or special meeting shall be passed. It doesn't say that these are the things that must be decided by the annual meeting. That's
because of where it is and how it falls. That's definitely how it would be interpreted. It doesn't.
Okay.
There's nothing in there that gives anybody else the right to do those things.
Okay, you're the lawyer, so that's good to know.
And that paragraph was actually written by another lawyer and then vetted through me. So I'm confident That's
Okay.
because it falls nowhere else. It doesn't fall within board
Okay.
duties. This
Okay.
is where it falls.
All right.
So that means that's what it's
All right.
for.
Hey,
All
Bill.
right.
Okay.
I
Good
wasn't
question,
considering context. I was just considering language. Okay.
Right.
Got
But
it.
that's how things, just so you know, that's kind of how things are interpreted. It's
Yep.
where it falls.
Hey,
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Bill, Andy here, having spent too much time in the government, I'm reading that that is an enumerated list that shall only be decided by the congregation at an annual or special meeting, but it does not require an annual review. Am I reading that right, Mitzi?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
In other words,
Thank you.
this is where it comes up, if it comes up. And that's, you get that from where it's located in the bylaws.
Okay.
Okay. We're no longer going to accept proxy voting, and Debbie can tell you what a nightmare that's been. There's nothing illegal about them, but there is, as we get larger, there is more and more potential for abuse. And I personally feel that, and I think that the whole board agrees, I'm pretty sure I can say that. I'm thinking about the day we talked about it, and yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone agreed that getting rid of proxy voting is really in the church's best interest. We took the quorum requirement down to 20%, which is legal. And if you've been to annual meetings where it's been a problem, I think most people will be glad that we are no longer going to have that problem, especially as we get larger. As we get larger, it seems actually that it is not so that the number of really interested people is going to increase. It's the percentage is likely to decrease. So it's best for us if we lower the quorum. Although it'd be great if everybody showed up. It's not meant to discourage, but it certainly is meant to make it more possible to have an annual meeting.
This is Debbie. We will, of course, still do everything we can to encourage 100% of the fellowship to show up for annual meetings and special meetings. It's just this gives us a little more wiggle room of whether or not we have a board.
Article 6, Board of Trustees. Some of this stuff was for Virginia State Corporation Commission. Standard eligibility requirements, other things that we didn't, specific duties that we didn't have before, and we didn't need to have because we weren't incorporated, but now that we are, we do. Also, our old board, and I'm sure no one took this literally, but just in case, our old board, our old bylaws said that we will have 9 members, and certainly we almost always have 9 members, but that didn't allow for the possibility, or it allowed for an interpretation where we couldn't function if we didn't have 9 members, which makes no sense because people drop off or for whatever reasons. And there may be a period of time where we are filling the vacancy. So this just allows us the flexibility to function as a board and vote on matters if for some reason we have less than 9 members. Moving on.
Wait, this is Chris Johns. Mitzi, Mitzi, under Article 6, what is the no compensation provision? What does that mean?
The IRS requires. Do you have the bylaws in front of you?
It says added no compensation provision, but I'm not exactly sure what that means.
I have the bylaws.
That doesn't mean that nobody can get paid if that's what you're asking. What that means
it says to avoid potential excess benefit, and I'm not. This is Chris asking the question.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't blame you.
Go ahead.
Right, hold on 1 second. You're gonna have to give me a second.
It's under Board of Trustees. No,
Yeah,
Article
it's for
6.
the Board of Trustees.
Right.
Again, you have to look at the paragraph that it falls under.
Right.
So it's not about staff.
You see, so it says.
Well, it does say
salary.
ministerial
The
staff.
wording is actually, this is Debbie, no salary or under Board of Trustees, it says No salary or compensation shall be paid to any member of the board in his capacity as a board member, but nothing herein shall be construed to preclude any board member from serving the fellowship in any other capacity and receiving reasonable compensation. Moreover, the board member may receive reasonable reimbursement for travel and other approved expenses upon
It's about the board, Chris.
Right. So, Chris, you
Got you.
could get
Okay.
paid as DRE, but if you also became a board member, the board can't pay itself as board members. Does that make sense?
Right.
Great, thank you.
Does that answer,
Yep.
Chris?
It does. Thank
You bet.
Yes,
This is
ma'am.
Bill again.
Thank you.
This is Bill again. I have a question in that article also under the paragraph entitled compensation and election.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a sentence in it that says no less than 50% of the board shall consist of volunteers from the fellowship who are not related to each other or to paid staff. So
Right.
I saw nowhere in this section a requirement for a board member to be a member of the fellowship. So are we opening up the possibility that board members come from outside the fellowship?
Yeah, that isn't in there, and that's interesting, but I think that we didn't have it in our old ones. I mean, I think that the procedure for voting on, allow the fellowship to make that decision. If they want to do an outside member on the board, the fellowship can decide to do that or decide not to do that based on their votes.
So that wasn't in the previous bylaws, the old bylaws?
I don't. No, well, not that I recall, and I pretty much went through this line by line.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
okay.
say it with absolute certainty, but it isn't something we took out.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay. All right. This is Diane here, Diane Elstein. Is there a reason why we can't put that in there now? I mean, it does make
I
sense.
can tell you that if I have to make changes to this thing now, we won't be able to vote on it on the 20th.
Oh, because we won't have the time to do that? Or
Yeah,
why?
we won't have the time to do it or the ability to vote on it after it's done. Because
Okay.
the board
that
has
could-
to approve it first.
Okay, so that could be something for a future.
And also, yeah, you
Okay.
can add it in the future. We can do that at the annual meeting if you want. But the truth is I'm not sure that you want to. I mean, it's remotely foreseeable that you would want an outside accountant on the board one day.
Exactly right. Exactly. Just what I was going to say. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly not vote for a board member who is not a member of the church. This doesn't preclude that. But if we were to add that as a provision, we wouldn't have the flexibility to have a non-member on the board. And there may be in the future some reason why we would want one.
We may decide that we want an independent accountant who has no connection to the fellowship. If we were to get, say, a large federal grant, we may want to show that a member of our board was an independent accountant. I don't know that that would ever happen. And our board members have to be elected by the congregation. So if the congregation disagreed with that, they just wouldn't vote for him. But this enables us to have a flexibility that, albeit we may never use, but that we have it if we need it. But you are exactly right. If the congregation feels strongly against this, it is something that at an annual meeting, and we will still be having our June annual meeting this year, we could make that change. If the congregation felt strongly that they didn't want that flexibility.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Mm-hmm.
So we had a whole separate section for corporate officers, just for clarity. It was very brief in the current bylaws. It's very brief and not terribly specific, so we made it more specific. And then for Article 8, the ministry, associate ministers, added a section on the creation, appointment, and removal of associate ministers within this article. We don't have any. It's not currently an issue, but to the extent it may become one day, we'll be glad to have that.
Okay, because at some point in time, I think we should put in there something about, it says 4/5 of those members present and voting. It doesn't say 4/5 4/5 of how many, of what percentage. And I know when it comes like to electing a minister or terminating the minister, it's supposed to be 80% of the congregation. And
well, it says that still. It's actually the attorney working with us suggested that we change. I don't want to get to that. Oh, I see. Right, the ministry. The attorney working with us wanted it to make a smaller percentage, and we said no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, it says of members present, and it
well,
seems
that's
to be
it was before.
If your quorum is now 20%, then 15 to 16% of the congregation could bring a minister on board.
Or terminate one, exactly, and that's
or terminate one.
Yeah, and UUA recommends 80% of the congregation for both of those.
So do you want that changed back to
something
the congregation? Hold on a second, please. Do you want that to go back to 80%, 4/5 of the congregation? Because that's an awful big number as we get bigger.
It's what UUA recommends, and that's what we've always got.
Debbie, you and I need to have a separate conversation about that. How we could streamline that change, because that's a material change that would have to go through the process.
And this again is something that could change for the annual meeting. I don't think we'll need this between here and there.
Right. We could do that in the annual meeting. And I think it's an excellent point, and I think maybe we should deal with that. What do you think about that, Diane?
Okay, that's fine. I just think it's time, and I know it was not in there before because I looked at the old one, but it really needs to be in there. Sign it
I
in.
missed that. That's an excellent point, and I think that we should definitely. I'm pretty sure Debbie's probably making copious notes, and we'll be sure to deal with that and have that up before the congregation at the annual meeting.
Well,
okay, it's an excellent point.
Thank you, Diane and Bill.
Hello. Andy, okay, we're talking about 4/5, which is 80%, so that the real change is in the quorum going from 33% to 20%.
No, I think what the change would be when voting on or terminating a minister, we need 80% of the congregation rather than 80% of those present.
So if we're going to vote on the hiring of a new minister or dismissal thereof, the quorum for that,
it has to be we would have to have a very large number at that meeting.
That's something for the June meeting.
Right. That's what we're saying.
Right.
We'll do that in June.
Right. So it's going to affect two places, because you have call or removal of the minister in Article 5 in terms of member meetings, and as requiring only a 20% quorum for quorum.
Well, if it needs 80% of the vote, then obviously the quorum thing won't work. But we can keep the quorum thing in there. And if we don't get enough people to do 80% of the vote, it won't go through.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, got it. Okay.
So Article 10, fellowship. Oh, this is probably the more we've gotten the most feedback on. Standing and ad hoc committees. I want to make this point. This is a long discussion with the board. When you have a lot of standing committees in a large church, what that means is that whenever that standing committee wants to make changes to how it does things, it has to go through the board. Ad hoc committees don't have to go through the board to make changes to their procedures, but they do have to be renewed every year. And so what the board has decided to do is to pick a month every year where we just renew all of our ad hoc committees at once, and sort of as a pro forma kind of thing, and take them from standing committees, not all of them, obviously, we're leaving some, but take them from standing committees to ad hoc committees so that they have flexibility within their own leadership. Does anybody have questions about that?
Mitzi, may I add? This is Reverend Doug.
Please.
Yeah, and it not only does it And the other thing is that it gives you more flexibility when a committee wants to be started or needs to be terminated because nobody's there and they're not doing the job. So currently, if we needed to do that, we would have to it would have to come up at the annual meeting as a bylaw change. This gives a lot more flexibility to be responsive as things come up.
So just a quick question. Since the Committee on Ministry falls in Article 8 as opposed to Article 9, it falls outside of the standing and ad hoc committee differentiation?
Yeah, it's its own thing, right.
It's its own little, okay, fine, got it.
It's its own thing. And that was because we were getting a lot of conference calls and meetings with the attorney, and they wanted them all to be ad hoc, and I thought, perhaps we should, this is sort of the compromise position for those committees. So then we skip down, we added an Article 7, providing for the authority of the general authority of the minister and board of non-ministerial staff.
Article 12.
It kind of, Article 12, what did I say? Did I say Article 12?
Hi, this is calling WW. My name is
I can't understand you.
Yeah, my last name is Wassem, W-A-S-E-M as in Mary, and 22401.
22401.
Hey, this is Chris.
Hey,
Ron,
What?
I think the
Ron,
host
mute your
can
phone.
That's to fully verify your account. May you please answer.
Hey, Ron, can you mute your phone?
4941.
I think the host can mute somebody.
Please bear with me.
All right, I'll try.
By the way, thank you for choosing WW as your wellness companion. As I can see, your account is canceled up until 24th.
I wish.
I'm sorry, is what?
Your account is.
Okay, thank you. It's done.
What was that?
That was Ron's phone was unmuted, but I muted it.
Okay, fine. I'm muting myself now.
You muted me somehow. I don't know how that happened, but okay.
Sorry.
So we think. New article providing for general authority of minister and the board of non-ministerial staff. That definitely is necessary as we get bigger. New article provide for a guidepost for creation and modification of the policy and procedures handbook. That's Article 13. Article 14, I'm sorry.
Mitzi, can you go back to the standing committees? I was just wondering how those 4 standing committees happen to be the ones that got listed particularly.
4 standing, those are these are standing committees that the board felt really did need board oversight, for sure. The finance committee for obviously, building and grounds, because that tends to be controversial more often than not.
Well, it's the assets.
And I can't
capital. They manage capital.
And capital assets. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you for saying that so well. Let me think. Hold on a minute. I've lost my place. Let me go back to it because I've gone beyond it.
It's finance, building and grounds, and nominating.
Yeah,
nominating
that's right.
is important because of
nominating office. Absolutely needs to be a standing committee because it has so much power over the congregation. The finance, for obvious reasons, because it controls assets, as does building and grounds, and that's why.
Okay, I wasn't just kind of curious about that.
Yeah,
okay.
no, God, that's fine. That makes sense. We welcome all questions. Fellowship and finances has the most changes. I am loath to go through every one of them. If there is a God, we might, someday in the future we may choose to change our fiscal year, and we didn't have that ability in the current bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
That's not saying we will, but it is saying that we want to. The annual budget procedure changed a bit. That was a board decision. The SEC requires those audit provisions, the deposits, contracts, endowments, designated contributions, all of the, now the IRS requires some of these, the SEC requires others. Minister's discretionary fund. We had to get, before it was just discretionary period, but the IRS doesn't like that, and neither does the SEC. So we had to give some sort of oversight, and it became the Committee on Ministry, which made sense to everyone, because to the extent humanly possible, you want to be able to keep it anonymous, right? Members who are asking for help often don't want the whole board or the members to know about it, which makes sense. Which made sense to the board, makes sense to me, but this allows for the oversight that makes the SEC and the IRS happy. New partnerships, joint ventures, LCCs, and auxiliary. That's really boilerplate language. And purchase and sale of property, again, boilerplate language, and how it's done under SEC and IRS rules. And the ADR provision. I don't know if you guys know what ADR is. It's an alternative dispute resolution. It keeps us from having to go to civil court. It allows for us to set up a mediator of disputes rather than go to court. As a litigator, I've worked with both. I can tell you that one is far less expensive than the other. I can say that satisfaction and the lack of hard feelings is better with ADR, but if you're really out to get somebody, civil court is better. So I mean, it all depends. But it was a unanimous decision of the board to create the ADR for us.
So this is essentially using arbitration as opposed to going to court. And I see there's a clause that requires all of our staff to sign on to that. Yep. Isn't that one of the issues that we've had in terms of women's rights and assault? The fact that they had been required to sign such a clause, and
no, they were required to sign. No, not ADR, so perhaps, but the one that's been such a controversy is NDAs, is non-disclosure agreements. That's the one you've seen in the news a lot, is that they were all required to sign non-disclosure agreements, so kept them from being able to do anything further.
Okay. All right.
It's a different agreement that they sign that causes problems.
Yeah,
and it does cause problems, and I'm very anti-NDA because of it. But it's not ADRs.
Okay.
Actually, the law requires, just so you know what an ADR is, or what the parameters of an ADR is. It's not that we can just pick anybody to be the arbiter, right? To be the person in charge of the ADR. There are specific rules and laws that govern. It has to be a person unaffiliated. They have to fit certain requirements. John was actually asked to be an arbitrator at some point, and the paperwork and the signing off and the background checks and the thises and the that's, it was really intense. It's a long drawn out procedure to be an arbitrator in one of these things, and it is always neutral. And one of the big advantages of it is it doesn't respect NDAs. It doesn't. You have different evidence rules. You have different. It's really probably, if I were a sexual assault victim, I would rather go to ADR than a civil court, because the evidence rules would keep out a lot of stuff that the ADR would let in.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Okay, this is Debbie. Now that we've gone through both documents, are there, I think hopefully we've heard all your questions. I have made a list, not only of all the questions asked, but also all the things we might want to consider bringing to the June annual meeting to change these bylaws. Are there any other issues, questions, comments at this time?
Yes. Hi, hello, John Bernard.
Hi, John.
Uh-huh.
Hi, two questions. One, we have to have what, 33% for quorum? Is that right? Next Sunday?
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
what if you? Okay. So what if? Second question. What if you don't get it?
Then we cannot have a vote.
Okay.
Like any other meeting, we can't have a vote.
Gotcha. Third question. I'm doing the common read for for Justice on Earth. I think it's supposed to be what time is this quorum or is the vote?
Is immediately
Right after.
following the congregation, we are going to start the meetings. So at about 11:45.
11:45.
Both
So
meetings back to back.
all right. So then what time do you think the whole thing will be over? Because the common read's supposed to start at 12:30, and I'd like to be there for the vote.
Sure.
I'll tell you what we can do. The truth is that with quorums, once you establish a quorum, you have the quorum. If you have to leave, you have to leave. But
Gotcha.
once you have a quorum, you've got a quorum.
Also,
that's true.
I'm hoping we've worked so hard to educate the congregation. These two handouts, this meeting, all over the newsletter, announcements every week. And we're hoping that people come ready to vote, and that I never want to squelch conversation, but I hope by 12:30 we've conducted both meetings and that we're done and that we're eating lunch.
Okay, very good.
The first meeting will be very, very fast because there's only a couple of things. The second meeting, which will immediately follow the first meeting, we just have to go through, I've lost count, I don't remember the number, 3 or 4 or 5 resolutions, maybe there are more, I don't remember, but none of which will come as a surprise.
Okay,
but you will have.
Chris Johns. Hello.
Yes.
Hey,
here.
I just want to remind people that the children are not released from class until 11:45, so you have to give parents time to pick up their children, drop them off in childcare if need be. And I would certainly also be willing to release class a little early to facilitate that. But I would just need to, if you want me to do that, I can. I just need to alert parents and teachers and such.
Hey, Debbie, can you coordinate that with Chris?
Yes, I will. I think that's a good idea, Chris. And I'll be.
Thank you, Chris, for bringing that up.
I think that's a great idea. Well, if you could coordinate with the parents to let everybody out a little early.
Yeah, and Debbie, you and I can talk about this separately, but I just wanted to bring that up. Okay.
Perfect.
You and I will talk about it. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
And just a quick clarification. You'll have to. It will be necessary to establish a quorum for each meeting individually. Correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
But is proxy still in effect?
What? Go ahead.
Can people still like it's on the changes that people will no longer be able to vote by proxy, but they currently can vote by proxy, correct?
No. Voting by proxy was always a decision of the board, and so with every single communication.
I'm just saying if it's still on the boards, then that might help get the quorum.
Yeah, but with every single communication we have sent out, we have said we can't allow proxies. The problem with proxies is this is such an important change to the congregation that proxies in the past have been such a mess that I don't want to have to rely on proxies to get the quorum.
Yeah, may I add that for the integrity of the process, it's probably better that we have live people there rather than a large number of people. They're only virtual.
If we were ever not to allow a proxy, this is the time.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, I will say that means I'm going to send you all away with a special task. Call up all of your friends at the fellowship and make them come on Sunday. Doug's going to be conducting the services. It's Martin Luther King's birthday, so it's a really good time to come listen to a good UU service. We're going to have fabulous food afterwards. We're paying for childcare. Please, 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 please do what you can. There's about 19 of you in this meeting. You know, I need each of you to bring 5 people, 5 voting members.
We'll have to blitz publicity this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Facebook and all the other.
I can send it out to my parents too.
And I want to add, you guys asked really, really good questions, and I'm glad you were all here. And I was really impressed by the number of people that joined this call, and the questions were fantastic.
And I've made a list, and we will use this to inform the June annual meeting because some really, really good issues were brought up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question. If this is Sarah, when is the time for like non-substantive suggestions for just word usage?
Now.
Is that now or is that later on for a later meeting?
A later meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
A later meeting. Okay.
Because if I'm going to be perfectly frank. If I don't have to make change to this thing, this is going to be a very smooth process. If I have to make changes to this thing, no matter how small the change, how non-substantive the change, it has to go through a board vote, and then we have to go through the lawyers. And if I don't have to do any of that, that would make this a very smooth process. I mean, if for something substantive that...
No, I hear you, and that's why I asked the question without asking my question.
Thank
you. My suggestion. So we're good. I'm good.
Hey,
Why don't we do
Mitzi.
this? All of you that have non-substantive changes, email me. I will start a file to present to the board when we start to discuss the June annual meeting. And if you send them to me, it'll help me keep track of them. And then when the board will start to discuss, we've already scheduled the annual meeting. We will start formal discussions at the February and March board meetings. And I will prepare a document for the board of anything that gets sent to me of non-substantive changes to these bylaws. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Hey, Mitzi.
Yes.
Okay, we already have the article. Yeah, Andrew here. We already have the Articles of Incorporation filed with the Stafford County Courthouse, correct?
No, with the State Corporation Commission.
The State Corporation Commission, and we already have a certificate of incorporation from the SEC.
Correct.
So the bottom line is next Sunday on January 20th, the congregation needs to approve the bylaws as written. And we are formally incorporated upon submission of the minutes of the meetings next week. And everything else is subject to further discussion. Is that a correct?
If I'm following you correctly, I believe that you are correct.
Yes.
In other words, we are already incorporated. If the church was totally anti-incorporation, which I'm not hearing, we could just let it dissolve and not do it. But we are incorporated. Now we have to adopt. And the other big thing we have to do, just so you know, we didn't talk much about this. The big thing that we're doing in the meeting, the final meeting of our unincorporated body, is we are approving the transfer of all of our property by gift deed to the corporation. That's the big deal that we're doing in our very first meeting, in our very last meeting. Once we've done that, we're done as an unincorporated body. And then we immediately convene the first organizational meeting of the corporation, which already exists, and we approve the bylaws and the few other resolutions that are required by the SEC. And then we're done. We're done. Yay. Until we record the deed.
Yeah, I think that was an important piece that might have been missing early on.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry, my fault.
Yeah, basically, we are done pending approval of the transfer of deed on Sunday and the acceptance on the follow-on on the subsequent meeting.
Right.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize the language as we're adopting bylaws. We're not changing bylaws. And we've already sent out the bylaws to be considered, and we are working under the provision you have to send them out 30 days in advance. So if we were to change anything, then the congregation wouldn't have that
It's 19. Yeah.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have the ones that we're talking about tomorrow, next week. So that would mess everything.
Right.
So we have to. They're frozen essentially for now, and any changes after that will be taken up at our annual meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
So just keep in mind, an important point is we're not changing the bylaws. We're adopting bylaws.
Right.
And our final meeting is to transfer the property to the new corporation. And then we will buy gift deed, and then that deed will be recorded in Stafford County. So it's a very big thing that you're doing, guys.
We will also elect our officers, but it's a pro forma.
Yes.
Everything that's
Right. I mean, it's, who's going to be on the slate. We've drafted agendas. Who's going to be on the slate are the officers that exist now, and the first initial directors, which we call a board of trustees, is the board as it exists now. But you have to vote on those people.
Are there any other points people would like to make, or would they like to make them by emailing me for future reference? Okay, I can't tell you how pleased I am at how many people, instead of out plowing or instead of drinking hot toddies, got onto this meeting. I have to see you next Sunday, and we have to have a quorum, because, and I want us all to applaud, maybe unmute and applaud, and thank Mitzi. Mitzi has given this fellowship hundreds of free legal hours.
Oh, stop.
Hey, Mitzi.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I want to emphasize something that I just hope you all, I think you must appreciate, because it doesn't seem that there's been any real negative feedback on the fact that we're incorporating. This is a very good thing for our church. This is something that should probably have been done a while ago, but this is an excellent and important thing that we're doing. And yes, it took a lot of work, and it's struggling with the word here and the word there, but congratulations to everybody for being on board and being savvy and with it enough to understand that this is an important thing, but a very good thing for our church.
Debbie, regarding the recording, if you could tell me what you want me to do with it now, or we can talk.
I think it'd be nice to put it on the fellowship's webpage.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could do the recording into a YouTube account somehow, and then provide a link to that, so it could be played out loud.
Okay. I'm heading to Chicago in a couple hours. I'm actually over there right now, so I will. I'll play around with it tomorrow.
Okay, and tell me, and then let me know what you need me to do from here, because I'll be home all week.
All right.
Hey, I think Doug's the host. I think I called this meeting adjourned, but Doug's the host. So.
All right. Well, I'll pull the plug after everybody leaves.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Be safe. Bye.
Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful snow day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.